Welcome to the January 2021 Power Hour. This is Tessa and I'm coming to you from Indiana. And today we're going to work on a 2-page layout. This is not a symmetrical layout. We're going to create this 1-page frame layout over here and then a corresponding page on the other side that will coordinate. With this collection, I used an old paper pack called Explorer and some blue, orange, and brown cardstock. I've actually made this layout a couple of times. So let me show you a couple of other of the paper choices I made. This is one made with a collection called Sorbet. And this is a collection, Fresh Fusion. So you can see the theme with each of my layouts is that I chose a pretty bold print and then coordinating cardstocks. The sorbet print is really busy, but I have the green, navy, and eggplant to help tone it down. And also my Explore print was pretty busy, but you can see once you mount your photos, it provides a nice framed look for your page. So the supplies you'll need 2 pieces of that statement paper if you're gonna make both pages. I've chosen a print out of Daydreamer. And then I've chose 3 cardstock colors that will coordinate with this print. I believe this is Koala Gray, Sweetheart Pink, and Evergreen. So you can set one of the base prints to the side, one of the statement prints. We're just gonna work with a 12-inch trimmer today. We're gonna cut some pieces and then cut some frames. So we're going to start with the cardstock base. So whichever cardstock you want on the bottom of your 3 layers. And so for me, this is going to be this evergreen. This is going to be the base. You're not going to see a lot of it. You're only going to see the edge. So if you want to conserve paper, you can cut out a frame inside this and save it. I did not do it on this layout. You can see I used to use the cardstock as a full base. On the Fresh Fusion one, you can see I did cut out the inside of that. So it depends on if you want to preserve cardstock and if you want to eliminate a little bit of weight in your album. So to create a frame, to cut the inside out, using 2 binder clips is the easiest technique. If I was going to do the 3/4 inch, like it says on the handout, I would move my blade housing, you see this white line here, and I would want that at the 3/4 mark, and I'd put a little mini binder clip up there. However, I don't have binder clips out that are that small. So I'm just going to put the binder clips that I have on, and I'm just going to make my frame however big that is. I think it's about 1 1/4 inches. It'll just give me a little extra room to adhere my layers to. So I'm going to go ahead and stick this out to about 1 1/4 inches also. And I'm just going to cut between my binder clips. The binder clips allow me to have something to push up against too. Super easy and hard to mess up. If you didn't quite get your edges, you can use some scissors and cut them loose, but it looks like I did a good job with my frame. So now I'm going to work on layer number 2, which is B, frame number 2. And I want my Sweetheart Pink to be my middle layer. And before I cut out the frame, I'm actually going to cut off 2 strips. I want to cut off 0.75. So 3/4 inch. I'm going to cut off both sides. I'm going to use these strips, so I want to save it. And now I can cut out the frame if I want to. Actually, before I cut this frame, I'm gonna go ahead and cut my last piece. I cut the straight strips, and then I can just do the binder clips one more time. So this would be layer number C. And for this one, we're gonna cut off 1 1/4. So this is really gonna be a 10 3/4 inch square. And then for my statement print, I want a 10-inch square. So I'm going to cut off 2 inches off each side. Or you can cut 10 by 10. If you want to preserve no, actually that's not true. Forget I just said that. We're going to do 10 inches, 2 inches off each side. You do want to keep the 12-inch section. Say sometimes when I'm cutting a 10-inch square, I'll do a 2-inch L frame to use on another page, but that's not appropriate for this layout. Okay, so now I have my layers, and so I'm going to go back and cut out the insides of these for the frame. I'm going to stick my binder clips up there. And I want about a 3/4 inch frame, like I said, but it doesn't really matter. That's just, I need at least that much. Your frame can be bigger. And like I said, for the ease of the binder clips, I actually had out. You'll notice though, the difference here is because I don't have a full 12 inches, I'm gonna have to move my binder clip. So I'm gonna move my binder clip up, and we really just need 3/4, which would be about right here. I'm just gonna do it here at the 10. So you can see I'm going to line up my little white spot with that measurement, and then I'm going to move my binder clip up. So now I can work my way around. Sometimes these cardstock colors are hard to find. And by cutting out the middle, I will have some left I can make mats with. I said on the first one, if you didn't quite get to your edges, which sometimes I don't, depends on, just a little scissor cut will help free up your frame. Remember, this one is going to be a different size also. So I'm going to want to adjust my binder clip again. This is really more like a 1-inch frame. Again, it can be bigger than the 3/4 inch. Just depends on how much cardstock you want to preserve. And how much room you want to have to adhere. I'm all done with my trimmer. Now I can work on putting together the first. I'm just going to adhere the layers. I think it's easier for me to work from the top down. And you can use either a positional tape or mini. I'm going to use up, I still have a lot of old mini tape. the old runner where it came out the top. I'm going to generously put it around my frame. And here, now I can go around the second frame. We do carry mini tape currently. The refills look the same as our regular tape. I just have had a good stock of this old one. Try to use up the old before it goes bad. I'm going to center this on top of the pink. Time for the final layer. I like these old runners because they were thin. Like I'm a little bit more exact where the tape's going, but having the tape come out the top, it's kind of annoying. Very cute. So there's page A, the first page. Now I can work on piecing together my second one. So I have a second sheet of my background print, and I want to use the 12-inch strips that I have cut. So you should have 3 of them. You have the print and then the 2 cardstock. So the nice thing about the back side of the print is it will show up, but I'm going to frame this with the color. So you can decide what order to adhere your pieces depending on how you think it looks. So I have these 3 choices. I know I'm going to put cardstock in each side, so I'm really just deciding if I want to put the koala gray on top and the pink on bottom, or if I'm going to put the gray on bottom and pink on top. If you don't like the back side of your print, just go cut another strip of something else that coordinates. You can even use another cardstock and save that for a different layout. And then you can choose where to adhere these. I tend to push things fairly close to the bottom just so I have more space up above. I mean, I could push it up into my page a little bit if I wanted to see a nice selection of the statement print underneath it. Maybe I'll push this one up a little bit so I can see a little bit of this rose. And if you're not confident in putting it across, this is actually a great step to use the 13 by 13 cutting mat with, because you can be a little bit more exact in your measurements. You can see I'm going across here on that 2-inch line. I actually did a pretty good job of keeping that straight. Sometimes the cardstock is slightly shorter than the print though, so I'm going to try this one more time. There's sometimes little variations. Just going to give myself a slight margin over there, just enough to maybe pull this a little closer to that edge, a little bit more centered on there. I'm just going to give this a slight little tuck underneath the cardstock. Give it a little bit more of a seamed edge. How cute is that? So I have 2 pages ready for my book. If you don't love the look of different ones side by side, you could just make 2 sets of these, and you could have 2 of these next to each other and then 2 of these next to each other in your layout. You could also turn this so that you have, if you have horizontal photos, maybe you want to display. Turn it to the top. Use more of a title bar. If I pushed all that up and made that thinner, you know, look like more of a banner across the top. I could rotate it like this a little bit. I could also have, if I didn't want to use this print, I also could have gone and cut another strip of the evergreen and put that on here. And I'm guessing that when I do the final layout, my final design, I will end up pulling over this evergreen. I will either punch, this would be a great spot to maybe punch the rose garden border punch we have now, or the old rose border maker in the dark green, and line it up on one of these cardstock colors. So I look forward to seeing what you post. If you want to post an ideas room, it's hashtag January 2021PH. Thanks for joining me.
Hi, this is Megan Jackson. I am here with the second layout for the January 2021 Power Hour. You are definitely going to want to make sure you have your handout all printed and ready to go. But here is a sample layout. I actually put this together as one of the examples in our original class, but kind of finished it up here to be able to show you what the final layout could look like depending on how you put it together. Once again, this is a layout that's going to have a lot of flexibility in it. I do give you some suggestions on how you might want to arrange some photos, but you're going to have a blank slate once we put together this bottom border section. So to get started, what you're going to want is a couple of background papers. I use navy in this sample. I am going to be working with the Stars and Spirit collection that came out in the summer of 2022. So I'm going to be using a couple of the tonal red backgrounds. Those are my background papers. Then the kind of, if you imagine the large photo mat we have going on here is actually a piece of paper that we're going to trim the top portion and the bottom portion. These were the same piece of paper. This light green background is the opposite side of this plaid paper from the Genuine collection that is now retired. But you will see that we're going to cut it, flip it, and use both sides of that piece of paper. So I needed something that I can use both sides of. So imagine I've got this red. What I decided to go with out of that Stars and Spirit is I am using the Fireworks paper. The opposite side to it is a nice tonal blue. So that's going to give me that option when it comes to putting some of my border elements on here that it's going to work well. You can imagine that if I have my fireworks up here at the top, and I'll have this blue showing through that we're going to use the picket fence punch on. You will also want to have some scrap pieces of paper that you can make some border elements out of. So we're going to use a border across the bottom section. We're going to use a picket fence, and we'll want some other pieces to cut some strips out of. So I have some navy and then the tonal paper from that Genuine. That's in my sample. And of course, then pieces to be able to do any kind of mats that you want to put together. But for today, you're going to want to make sure you have some strips of paper and just some extra coordinating stuff that we can punch from, make strips from, make mats from. And for my sample, I have the light blue star paper. I also have some white shimmer and some cranberry that I'll be punching things from. All right, so to get started, we are going to grab our instructions. And I talked about the 2 sheets of pattern paper that you like both sides of. We're going to actually need to have 2 of those pieces. So I have the firework paper that has the opposite side as the blue. We have 2 of those pieces, and that's what our cut guide here is going to use for. So if we're going to go down here and we're going to say, the directions say to punch the picket fence on the top edge of the paper. So if you have directional paper, you're going to want to find out where your top edge is. My paper here is, maybe directional. There's really not a whole lot of direction to it, so I'm not too concerned. But if you have something like trees or some other pattern that you need to know your top edge of, pay attention to where that top is. So what we're going to do is we're going to put the top edge of our paper into our paper holder of the Border Maker system. And like I said, I don't know that it really matters too much which direction's which, but here's my top edge. I'm going to say this is my top edge. Now I'm going to use my picket fence. So the picket fence is the one that comes with the Border Maker system. So if you have Creative Memories Border Maker system, you should have this picket fence. You can use other cartridges if you want. Picket fence is is an edge style Border Maker cartridge, meaning when you punch it, it stays attached to the paper. It's going to leave a decorative edge at the top, and it's going to leave these slots that we'll be able to weave paper in. You can use other types of edge style if you want. Picket fence, just everybody has it, so it's an easy one to teach with, but you could use other edge style ones. I am filming this in July of 2022 right now. One of them we have, it's beautiful, is called Flourish, or maybe you want to use a different one, but use that edge style. It's got to stay attached to the paper. And I'm just going to punch down the top edge of my paper. All right, I'm going to do that on both pieces of paper. So there I have punched both of my picket fences. I can actually put my Border Maker system away for now. I'm done with it, unless you might need to keep it out if you're using the Border Maker system to make some of the accent punch. If you look at the original instructions here, you'll see we have picket fence along the top edge, and then I do show something maybe like a tree border here. There's an accent punch that's also done in there. So we have our two picket fences. We're now ready to go on to step number 2. We're going to need our trimmer. So we've punched picket fence along the top edge. Now we're going to trim at 3 inches. So I want to come over here to 3 inches, and I will trim that off. And I'm trimming at 3 inches from the top of my picket fence. I'm going to do that on both pieces of paper. 3 inches from that top point. All right, so now I have my 2 picket fence borders, and I have my remnant pieces here. Now, if I look at step 3, I've set aside my borders, and step 3 now wants me to trim the remaining paper to 11.5 inches wide. So I'm about 9 inches wide here, because remember I cut off about 3 inches. It's maybe a little less than 9, but roughly 9. I need to go ahead and rotate these pieces of paper, and I'm going to cut off 1/2 inch from each one. That's going to get me to that 11.5. I could come out here and say I'm going to trim this to 11.5 inches. You can also just cut off 1/2 inch, but if you want to measure all the way out to 11.5, you can do so. 11.5. These are scrap pieces. All right, so I've got a good portion of this done. Now it's kind of start ready to do a little bit of dry fitting so we can figure out how we're going to finish out this layout. One of the areas that's a big kind of, question mark for everybody is going to be, how exactly am I going to handle this bottom? Because that's where we have a lot of flexibility in our decorative elements. So I'm going to go ahead and bring both of my papers out here. And I'm going to do just what I call a dry fit. I'm just going to lay pieces in place. I'm not using any adhesive. And I'm just going to kind of imagine how it all looks. Or I don't have to imagine. I can just do my little bit of a rough draft here and figure it out. Now I'm going to bring down, I want to make sure I have an even border at the top and the side. That should be about 1/2 inch. Now here is my base layout. All right, this is kind of how things get a good start to it. Now I have picket fence here, so I can do a weaving detail. So what I've done, when you weave with picket fence, you can use a 5/8 inch strip, and that I do detail over here. A 5/8 inch strip of paper to weave into picket fence. So I did that. I trimmed two cranberry pieces to 5/8 inch wide. But I wanted to have it a little bit more exciting than just a solid strip. So what I did, I'll flip it over and show you. I actually trimmed the starry paper down to just shy of a 1/2 inch, and I layered that on top. So when I weave this in, I'll have, it almost looks like a belted effect. And I am going to alter my weaving pattern a little bit. I'm going to start under, and I'm going to go over 2 empty slots and then down and then right back up. I'm going to skip 2 and then go under 1 and back up. Skip 2, under 1, and you can just kind of play around with it. You can go in and out of every one. You can just do whatever you want to do there. Or maybe you're using a different border maker cartridge and you don't have the ability to weave, and that's all good too. So you can see how that starts to pull in there. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to do the quick weave. So it's under 1, over 2 blanks. That must be. That pattern does seem to make it pretty even, so that you'll start under on both ends. All right. So when I put these in place, you can, vary if you want to go all the way to the bottom, you can. I'm going to come up a little bit from the bottom, give myself a bottom edge here too. And you might want to go ahead and make it that's 1/2 inch. So it would mirror the margins at the top and the bottom. So there we go. All right. So now I need to put a border in here, a border element. Maybe I have a sticker that I would want to use, or I could punch a border. And what I've done is I have elected to punch a border. And I am using the Star Banner punch. And I'm going to I punched it in the white shimmer, and I'm going to shadow that with the cranberry paper. And so it's going to come in a little bit like this. I've got some edges that I'll need to clean up with some scissors when I punched it. Just giving things a little snip to clean them up. And I'm going to layer, like I said, I'm going to make it a shadow. So I'm going to shadow that red here. And one thing I did do is I saved my red stars after I punched, and I'm going to come in and glue these in place to give it more of that solid star or solid. If I shadow it just right, it's almost like I can fill in those horizontal slots. And then by putting the stars in there, it just makes it look like it has more of a solid red piece behind it rather than those open spaces. So I'm going to have to play around with that a little bit, get that adhesive. The glue pen works really well for that type of small detail. So those are going to be my borders on either side. This is definitely a 4th of July festive layout. And then it's going to be time to think about how I want to arrange my photos. So I give you some suggestions. As I said, that you really have a lot of flexibility in this particular layout, because this right here is about what we're going for, right? So now you have all of this up here to play with, to put your photos on there as they work. So my suggestions in the handout itself are a couple of horizontal images and then some verticals. And of course you can make adjustments as needed. I always seem to end up with a lot of vertical photos. One of the techniques I love to do is this is a 4.5 by 6.5 inch mat. I'm going to put 2 of these on there. And then I have, these are just some 4 by 6 pieces of cloud, or it could be the light blue cardstock, and just showing those in like such. This pretty much mimics what I did on my sample layout. And then some 4 by 6. And these could just represent the actual photos themselves. So you will be able to get a couple of 4 by 6s on here. If you need to, you can trim down the horizontal 4 by 6s. They're a little tight in there. You might need to trim those down a little bit to get them to work. Or you can overlap. And then just imagine we put photos on like such. So definitely follows what was in the sample. And then you, of course, add all of your details to your layout, all of your embellishments, a title. In my original, I'll get my sample back out again so you can see kind of how I did some of the details. I ended up needing to reverse the images. So you can see I have my vertical, all my 3 verticals over here. This side had the horizontals just because of the way this particular set of images laid out. Here's the start of our day as we're waiting for surgery, and then kind of the recovery. But you can see here, I pushed up my trio and I have some journaling space under here. We did use 4 by 6s. I ended up cutting this one down a little shorter than a 4 by 6, but I could have left this as a 4 by 6 with that 4.5 by 6.5 inch mat, and I could have had my journaling space maybe in a peekaboo pocket. I could certainly add a journal box down somewhere, even like a half circle or a rectangle here that would have that journal box in there. Lots of places to add your title, embellishments, and so forth. Just great ways for you to make this layout yours. So if you do decide to share the layout in our ideas group after watching this video, we do have a Facebook group on a Facebook group. I'll have the link in the description that you can join. It's where we share all of our layouts that we all create from our Power Hour. And you would just use the hashtag January 2021 PH, and that will get you to see any other layouts that happen to be shared. All right. So I hope you enjoyed it. I can't wait to see what you guys create. Thanks so much for watching.